Could you define for us and for our audience what it means, like the core values of Western society, and then we can continue talking about postmodernism?
Well, I think the core values of Western civilization are the same values that inform any civilization, right? If you are going to have a large number of people living together peacefully, then there are certain civilized values that one has to respect. Certain respects for the individual, certain autonomy right over people's lives, an agreement that by and large we're going to try to sort out our differences through discussion and diplomacy. We're not quickly going to go in a savage direction and try to conquer you and take people's stuff. That civilized people will respect others for their accomplishments, for their skills in technology, their skills in the arts, their skills in craftsmanship, right, and so forth. That they will have a more or less stable political system, right, where people know what the rules are, that they have some confidence that there will be a fair administration of justice. You have to have a civilization in which people are secure enough in their property that they can start businesses and create the wealth that's going to then support some science, support some technology, and support the arts, right, so to speak. So all of the civilizations have, whether they were Western civilizations or ancient civilizations in the East, right, and in Africa, have to some extent got those core values correct, and a widespread administration, right, of them. It is true that Western civilization has been unique, and I would say it's been unique in the systematicity, right, with which it developed of a kind of a full philosophical understanding of what those civilized values are, and it was able to do so consciously and then systematically apply them through political institutions, educational institutions, and particularly getting the economics right, particularly getting the politics right, and getting the science right, so that in an unprecedented way it was able to have a civilization that accomplished amazing things in the arts, the sciences, and in politics. So what I would say is that most civilizations then have grasped these principles, sometimes in implicit form and sometimes unsystematically. That one of the achievements of early Western civilization was to grasp them explicitly and systematically, and then to apply them. And then one of the proofs in the pudding has just been that Western civilization is now kind of a misnomer, because those core values are being adopted by civilizations all over the world. So we're talking about a global civilization that's broadly in favor of democratic markets, free trade, respecting people despite their ethnicity, religious toleration, equal rights for women, and so forth.
So now we go back to the other side of the spectrum. So the question it would be like, what do you think is the strategy of the postmodernist or the new left or the cultural relativists, like the hidden strategy in order to see the world burn? You know what I mean? I mean, what's the intrinsic motivation of this ideology in order to implement their bad, in this case, ideas?
Yeah, well, postmodernism comes in degrees, and there are some people who are semi-postmodern for epistemological reasons, right? Or they are semi-postmodern because they are attracted to the oppression analysis that comes in the normative realm. But if you talk about systematic, thoroughgoing postmodernism and you take it to its logical conclusions, right? The way a significant number of intellectuals and activists, right, will do, you do end up in a kind of nihilism, right? And that is the position that says, yes, I would rather see the world burn, or I'm willing to see the world burn. And it's not that there is any positive vision, right, that is going to come out of that, right? So if you think of older religious versions of end of the world, where you had people really hoping that there will be the apocalypse and that the whole world will burn, at least officially behind that is an idea that then there will be a second coming and there will be some sort of ideal world that will replace it, right? Or in some versions of the older socialist apocalyptic vision. Yes, we do have to be brutal, and yes, we do have to have a violent revolution, and we have to destroy all of the institutions of current society. But even there, out of it, there was some vision that there would be some sort of a beautiful socialist society that would then replace it. You don't find that in the contemporary, more nihilistic postmodernists, right? It is a destructiveness, right, for the sake of destruction. Now, this, I think, is where we need to get a little bit speculative, because you ask about motivation, and that means you have to get inside people's heads. And that's always something that you can only do indirectly, right, by seeing what they do when they have power. Do they have any sense of positive value that they're trying to create with their value or with their power, or is their power used purely for destructive ends? If it's only used for destructive ends, then you know, right, that this person really is more nihilistic. And certainly in a lot of the rhetoric, right, what you find is among the more nihilistic of the postmoderns, a really strong sense of despair, that they had certain ideals, certain hopes, most of them political and economic hopes, but intellectually they have come to believe that those ideals are not going to be realized. And I do think it's a natural reaction when you have a strongly hoped for idealistic system, but you can't believe in that anymore, that you will go through a nihilistic phase, that you will just want to destroy things. You know, in our personal lives, we know what it's like. I don't know, if we are playing a video game, right? And you know, we spent a lot of money for our video game system. You know, it's many hundreds of euros, and my television is many hundreds of euros, and I put a lot of time in, and I really want to win the game. But we do know that there are lots of people, when they are extremely frustrated, right, in their video game, they will do things like, you know, take their controller and throw it at the screen and destroy, right, hundreds of euros, right, worth of stuff. So that is something that's possible, right, in the human condition. And if you do not have a psychology that teaches you how to handle your negative rage emotions when they come along, and if you have a philosophical system that kind of encourages you, as many strains of postmodernism do, to just let your rage and anger come out, and that you're justified in doing so because you're in a totally corrupt system anyway, then we can expect some pathological nihilistic results.
So I would like to change of topic, but that's too interesting. I need to continue making questions about that. What's the psychological bias or the psychological chemical reward that activates on the system of the, I don't know, the typical social justice warrior or the new left activist, when, you know, they see as correct to see the world burn? I mean, honestly, I don't get it. And as you're an expert, I need to ask you.
Right. Well, I'm not a neurologist, right, or a psychologist, so I'm going to only in a kind of in an informed amateur way speak to this. But it is true that if you look at the history of philosophy, and there I am in my history, in my expertise here, you do find any number of highly intellectual people who are exulting in the destruction of others. So again, if we go through the history of religion as an example, obviously there are many types of religions and several types of psychologies at work there, but there are a persistent strain in most of the major Western religions, right, of theologians and strongly religious people talking about what's going to happen to people who disagree with them in the afterlife. They are going to go to hell, and they are going to burn. And it's going to be such a beautiful thing when I am up there in heaven, seeing my hated enemies just melting and in torment, right? And it happens across the centuries, right? You find it in Tertullian, you find it in Augustine, you find it in Jonathan Edwards, and so on. So religion is, of course, one of these things that people think it's an important vision, and it pushes their value buttons very hard. Politics is another one, and you find the same thing in the history of politics, right? Of people who are willing, right, in family discussions to destroy friendships, to destroy their family relationships, right? If someone disagrees with them politically, right? I really want to just smash your face in and see you bleeding and hurt, right? frustrated I am. So it's not too big a leap then to say that people become activists and they stop thinking. And in many cases, of course, they get together in groups, right? They become a mob, and we know that mob psychology things kick in, that we just want to destroy anything that we perceive as an enemy just for the sake of destruction. So the problem, I think, is then a combination of certain negative tendencies that are possible to human beings, right, when they are psychologically worked up, with a philosophical position that we call broadly postmodernism that says that's okay, right? Those two together, you then have intelligent young people with a very skeptical, negative, nihilistic outlook who seem justified in their activism, but their psychology puts them in a very destructive place. And that, unfortunately, is a manifestation that we are dealing with in our generation.